Dr. Thackray from University of Sheffield and myself are going to present green steel, the role of scrap on behalf of the team. And there are actually more people actually are involved in this research, and not least in these slides. So what we're going to talk about is three things. The first is about the pathways to green steel manufacturing. The second is the role of scrap. And then the third one is the research activities in SUSTAIN program supporting the green steel production. So pathway. So Peter Warren talk about Richard Warren talk about the net zero agendas. So I mentioned a little bit here is actually in the last couple of years, my personal feelings, the data set out by the government to achieve a net zero for the whole economy and also for the steel industry has become closer and closer. In 2019, it says it's 2050. Early this year is 2035. Now in the Glasgow breakthrough, this is 2030. This gave a big pressure to the researchers and also to the industry, but also is sort of opportunities. And then what are the potential pathways to achieve green steel production? I think the previous speakers, the first session and the second session, we talk about the different routes, different pathways. And in general, probably there's three pathways here. First is the circular economy approach. And then the second is optimizing current processes. And then the third one is CCUS and also direct carbon avoidance with renewable energy. So all these three big pathways, they are not isolated, they're not exclusive, they should be combined. And also for the individual plants, they have the different situations in the different stages, probably focus on different pathways. And in particular for the new technologies for CCUS and direct carbon avoidance plus renewable energies, I list here quite a few examples here. Find my point. Okay, so here, so there's all sorts of technologies. It's not an exhaustive list. So it's sort of CCUS combined with existing process or with alternative ironmaking process, full scrap-based EAF, hydrogen-based steel manufacturing, or electricity-based steel manufacturing. So all these processes, I believe, are likely to be available by 2030 or 2035. And we can say the most practical one is the full scrap-based EAF route. So that comes to the role of scrap. We know if we use the scrap to make steel, you will only have 1/3 of carbon dioxide emission, half of the energy consumption. If you combine with renewable energies, then you will probably get one of the cleanest routes to produce the steel. And the scrap can be used in all sorts of different processes, from conventional blast furnace to the a green hydrogen-based steel manufacturing process. So we're going to show you a few examples here. So if, for example, in the blast furnace, there are all sorts of researchers or practice around the world trying to increase the scrap utilization in the blast furnace. One example is here. For 1 ton hot metal, you can use 180 kilograms of scrap. This can reduce 16 kilos coal injection, 40 kilos coke usage. That means about 10 to 50% of the fossil fuel reduction. Of course, you need to consider the size, density, and the chemistry. And also that scrap usage in alternative iron making. Recent high standard trials indicate 40% scrap can be charged to the high standard process, so that can significantly reduce the carbon dioxide emission. And Professor Jeff Brooks just talked about scrap usage in the BOF. I fully agree. So normally it's about 15 to 20%, can go up to 25% without additional heat. But if you want to increase to about 40%, you need preheating. That means also you need also consider the engineering, economic, and the cost environment aspect. And then what I said is the full scrap-based EF is the most practical. It's most practical, but we know that the challenge is there for particular certain steel grades. That means we will face the challenges like process selections, particularly the refining and the casting. For the particular steel grades, there will be scrap quality issues like residues, particularly the variations, and also supply. And for the longer term, the scrap from the end of life electric vehicle will be the biggest challenge because of the increased copper usage in the EVs, and also the nitrogen, sulfur, and cleanness issues. But I believe all these issues are technical issues. They can be solved by the research and development and by process selection. And that another route is so that for certain steel grades, we can combine it with the scrap-based EF diluted with the DRI, HBI, pig iron, or alternative iron. So of course, this is new scenarios, particularly the scrap combined with green hydrogen DRI. That Professor Jeff Brooks also mentioned. Of course, in this process, I don't expect the DRI will more than 50% in this process should be as high as possible scrap is used. Now we come to the set point is what kind of research activity in the scrap utilizations in the sustain program leading to the green steel manufacturing. So one example is here, I'm showing here is about if we increase the scrap use in the steel manufacturing process, either conventional or the new process, we will get increased level of residues in the steel. So one activity task we're working on is to investigate the effects of the residue elements on the processing, processability, and steel properties. So this example say, if we increase the residual elements level from base to QA to 2QA, then we found that actually increased the strength of the steel, but reduces the elongation of the steel, but it still meet the steel specification. So another example we are doing here is for another type of steel, we're investigating the interactions between the residue elements, copper, chromium, and intentionally created manganese sulfide inclusions and also alumina inclusion. What's the interactions? So another example I'm showing here is about copper segregation along the interface steel and inclusion interface. So this is just examples about what we are working on, about the fundamentals there. And then another example, nice research we have done is about the effect of cooling rate, particularly the casting speed on hot shortness. So what we have found is if the same steel, if we cast at a different speed, for example, it's 0.5 degrees per second or 50 degrees per second, we found the penetration of the enriched copper enriched liquid elongation penetration along the green boundary can be reduced. That means during the hot rollings, if there is penetration can be reduced, that means your hot shortness can be reduced. And this gives a good indications about, say, different casting speed can manipulate the hot shortness. Richard, please.
Thanks, Zushu. Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to introduce a few details about Sheffield's involvement in this particular sustained project. Because also included in this piece of work is an EngD project at Sheffield beginning early next year, February, March time. And whereas Zushu and his team at Warwick are focusing more on the experimental side, and he's introduced some of those aspects already this morning, at the University of Sheffield, we're going to take a slightly different approach and maybe try and assess the environmental impact of existing and novel approaches to removal or retention of key residuals, and also maybe to extend that and to try and look at the assessment of various scrap sorting strategies. So we've got on the left-hand side some mechanisms for the removal of tin, for example, which are fairly well established, and on the right-hand side, different scrap strategies that might minimize the amount of copper in the scrap. So that's what we're going to be doing at Sheffield, trying to assess the environmental impact using various technologies of some of these strategies that Zushu has mentioned already. So thanks, Zushu, and back to you.
Okay, thanks, Richard. And I think this is a very good combination between our team and also Richard's team to investigate the different aspects of the scrap utilization in the green steel production. So another example in the sustain programs as I'm leading is about the disruptive process. One of the activities about green hydrogen steel manufacturing. It's a PhD research programs. The potential activities we're investigating is a critical evaluation of the hydrogen application in steel manufacturing. And one research activity is quite interesting. What Jeff talked about is about impurities, guns in the DRI, about their efficiency, quality impacts on the steel manufacturing process, and in particular about new scenarios of scrap combination with the green hydrogen DRI, because this is completely different DRI. Their combination, these new combinations, mathematical understanding, and also techno-economic assessment, and for the purpose of increase the scrap utilization in this process. And as what I said, I don't expect the green hydrogen DRI will be more than 50% in this process. And the conclusions is what we talk about is say scrap can play a critical role in green steel manufacturing, and this is particularly the case for the UK steel industry. We know the UK has plenty of scrap supply. It's short in primary iron ore and coking coal, and aging facility, enormous pressures from policies. And the scrap can be used, can be increased in blast furnace, in BOF, in alternative ironmaking process, and also in full scrap-based EF route. And the full scrap-based EF route has all sorts of challenges, but I believe this can be solved by research and development and by process selection. And the scrap-based EF with dilutions from DRI, HBI could be another route for green steel production. So in sustain, we are doing quite a few researches to support the green steel production, to increase the scrap utilization, particularly the scrap, to increase the residue tolerance in the processing and the products, effect of cooling rate on hot shortness, and assessment of environmental impact of existing and novel approaches for scrap utilization and the green hydrogen-based steel manufacturing. I think that's what Richard and I want to talk to the report today, and thank you.